Welcome back, Officers of the Republic. It's your Coruscant Underworld Police Chief, APGAINS. You guys know me as the master of farming guides, and I'm here to give you guys kind of some acronyms. You know, SWGOH is very full of acronyms. SWGOH itself is an acronym, right? This game has so many acronyms. And this is a concept that has existed, you know, as long as these teams had, but it never really had a name, so I'm going to put a name to it. In the Ultimate Free-to-Play Farming Guide we did a couple of days ago, we talked about a little anecdote how the Geonosians are like the syphilis of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, right? You know, syphilis is quite annoying, but can easily be solved with going to your doctor and get an antibiotic. It's gone in a couple of days. Maybe it hurts the pee a couple times, but then it's out, right? So it can be annoying, but it's easily dealt with and not really a huge deal, right? Geos, syphilis. And then I said, like, by extension, like Mon Mothma and other teams like that are the gonorrhea and whatever, right? I'm going to put the Tusken Raider Omicron kind of in that category, right? Omicrons, like I just said on stream, are inherently limited in that they only work for a game mode. And while the Tusken Raider Omicron is good in a certain sense, it also falls into the STD category of Geonosians and Mon Mothma and something like that. And I decided that, hey, you know, we talk about the characters as the rack, you know, nice little boobies, and we talk about the ships as in the acronym of ballsack. Why not actually give the, you know, the analogy of an STD like an acronym? So STD from now on is officially sometimes difficult, right? Sometimes difficult STD teams, Geonosians. Super easily dealt with, but sometimes difficult, right? So this kind of preys on, you know, your opponents. Like, let's be honest, like 70 to 80% of our opponents at any level of the game, like maybe it decreases as you get higher levels. But if you're an early game player, you're in the first 2 years of your experience, let's be honest, 70 to 80% of your opponents you can beat just by the fact that they're not the brightest, right? So they oftentimes do succumb to STD teams, right? Sometimes difficult, and that sometimes is when you play those people, right? Tusken Raider is kind of a similar situation where, like, there's lots of revives, but there are plenty of teams that prevent revives. So it's not like this stalwart defensive team. It's sometimes difficult, right? And that's not to say that STD teams like the Geos or Mon Mothma or Tusken Raiders don't have their place in the game, right? But they tend to have very diminishing returns over, you know, as you move up, right? Like the Geonosians, you probably never want a relic unless you're 6 to 7+ million GP. Mon Mothma, you kind of have to have a bunch of relics simply because, like, you farm JML or whatever, so you just happen to have, you know, a bunch of teams. But the STD teams inherently kind of lose value a lot quicker than, say, a Core 8 team or a Galactic Legend team or even a requirement team for a Galactic Legend or even a tertiary team. Like the Triumvirate or whatever, right? And oftentimes you find that people tend to, unfortunately, overinvest in STD, and that tends to be players who kind of only exist in that early game where, you know, the number of people who succumb to STDs is a lot higher, right? As you get to the later game, the bad players have quit or just haven't gotten there because they're a lot slower. People have been playing for longer. They're, you know, they're not going to fall. Like, they're going to go to their doctor and get some antibiotics, right? This is kind of the trap that a lot of people fall into. They start their early grand arenas, and a lot of their opponents are new to the game, obviously. So new players don't have access to antibiotics, so they fall for the STD teams. And then they kind of get this idea that these teams are really good, right? Because, like, oh my god, these teams are getting me crazy holds. So they start to overinvest into the diminishing returns of these STD teams. And then when they kind of progress a little bit and the players are actually competent and know what they're doing, they found that, you know, when they could have invested in any number of the hundreds of characters that are better to relic than, say, the Geonosians or, you know, the Tuskens or whatever, they find that they're not getting the same value out of those characters as someone else who used those 3 or 4 or 5 relics or even Gear 12s on something that's better, and they find themselves at a huge disadvantage. So I guess the moral of the story is STD teams, sometimes difficult, STD, the Geonosian, like stuff like that, right? They have their place in the game, and they're important. But don't overinvest, because oftentimes you'll find yourself in a sticky situation where you didn't allocate your resources properly, and your opponent has easy access to antibiotics and good healthcare. Maybe they don't live in the U.S., where healthcare sucks. Shout out to the U.S. healthcare system. You can suck my butthole. So just basically be careful. If you're playing good players who aren't brain dead, don't overinvest in STD teams. Subscribe. Bye-bye.